All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the OCD and Anxiety Show. My name's Matt Cotty, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the creator of the AAA Response. And so, on this episode, I want to talk about the idea of acceptance. And so, when we talk about acceptance, and why this is such an important part of OCD and anxiety recovery, a lot of confusion comes up for people because, well, one, there's this idea that acceptance is something that we do, right? It's an action we take, and the reality is acceptance is not an action but an inaction, right? Acceptance is our willingness to embrace what is, and the problem that most of us have, and the reason acceptance is so difficult, is because we are clinging to either a future that we want or that we wished we would have gotten, or a past that we think should be different, right? So we're or that we want to hold on to, should I say. And when we cling to something, what happens is that we have to protect it, right? We have to try to make it that we try to force life to become how we think it should be. And so the problem with that obviously is that we can't control life, right? And that a lot of things are going to happen in life that may not be exactly how you would prefer them to go, at least initially. And when you fight with life, that's what creates most people's turmoil and distress with life. Is not that life it happens the way it happens, but that you're trying to make it how you think it should be going, right? And our lack of acceptance really comes back down to this one word, should, right? This shouldn't have happened to me. I should be here in life. This should XYZ, fill in the blank. And the more we operate from this place of should, the less we accept what is, and the more conflict we have with life. And the reason that acceptance is such an important part of the recovery from OCD and anxiety is because, by its very nature, OCD and anxiety is often very, very uncomfortable, right? The experience of intrusive thoughts, anxiety, panic, even PTSD symptoms, right? They're very uncomfortable and unpleasant. But when you have the subconscious belief, or even the belief down there that you shouldn't be experiencing this, or you should only be happy, or you should fill in the blank to whatever that is for you, do you see how you're automatically going to resist that experience? You're automatically going to try to get rid of those intrusive thoughts. You're automatically going to try to get rid of the anxiety, or make it so you don't experience it. And that leads us to controlling, right, behaviors. And that's essentially what fighting with life is right? When we try to control life, I mean, just think about it. How successful are you at that? Because I'm not. I've never been. I've tried many times, right? And this is what the opposite of acceptance is, right? Is us controlling and trying to navigate and actually force life into this cookie cutter that we think that we know what's best. And what acceptance is the very first step to acceptance is to let go of the clinging, right? A lot of people want to use acceptance to try to get their result. And that's not what acceptance is about, right? A lot of people are like, well, Matt, how do I accept these thoughts? How do I accept these feelings so they go away? Right? We think we're going to try to use acceptance to get the thing that we want still. And that's not what it is. That's not what acceptance is, right? Acceptance is actually putting your trust and faith in something bigger than you, right? And saying, hey, I accept how this is, right? Well, that might be life, that might be the universe, that might be God, that might be the all, that might be source, whatever you choose to call it, right? But there's something beyond you, right? And that's a force that's greater than you, right? Even if it's just simply nature to you, right? If that's it, it's like that's the thing is that once you realize that, then you realize that you can't control things, right? And you aren't in control. Control is a complete illusion, in fact. And once you let go of that, you can stop trying to cling to how you want things and how you think things should be, because you realize, like, hey, well, I'm not in control always, Now, sure, you're in certain elements you are, right? You can control what you eat today. In some cases, you can control the clothes you choose to put on, right? So we have these elements of our life where we get to make choices and exercise free will. But at the end of the day, the reason that most people struggle with life, right, is because they're unwilling to accept it as it comes. And they think it should be a certain way. And so they fight with life, and they see life as the struggle. They see life as the bad thing. And it's not. It really isn't. I mean, sure, there are moments in life that are going to be hard. There are periods of life that are going to be hard. Life is not meant to be all happiness and always sunshine and rainbow. That's not what it is. But once we learn to accept life as it comes, we don't have to fight with it. We can work with it. And that's very different. It's a very different experience. And the reason that acceptance is so important in recovery is because once you can learn to start working with emotions that you don't particularly find comfortable, once you can learn to start accepting the fact that your mind's going to generate thoughts you don't necessarily want to experience. And what I mean by that is literally like it's going to happen, and there's not a lot you can do about that. Then you can start to let go of the idea that it should be a different way. Right? That your mind should always be at peace, and you should never have anxiety. You should always feel happy, right? All these things. And once we can let go of that clinging that we have to that idea and really start to embrace what is, we can start to work with what is. And paradoxically, what happens is that actually allows us to work through the experience to usually get to where we wanted to go initially. It's always this weird paradox. The more and more you're willing to accept anxiety, the less and less you're going to experience it. The more and more you're willing to embrace intrusive thoughts popping in your mind, or your mind getting kind of racing thoughts and stuff like that, the more and more you're willing to embrace and accept that experience and let it run its course until it stops, the less you experience it. It's a very weird effect, and it's very paradoxical. That's why I always say everything with OCD and anxiety recovery is extremely paradoxical, in my opinion, right? And the power of acceptance is really this idea of, or the real steps to acceptance is, first we have to let go. We have to let go of the things we're clinging to. And then we got to work with what is, right? We work with what is, meaning if you're having an emotional disturbance, right? And you're having a lot of anxiety, instead of doing things to get rid of, like work with it from there, like start there. And trust that your body knows what to do. If you're having thoughts that you don't particularly like in your mind, okay, instead of doing everything you can and try to push them away, which doesn't work, learning to accept that, yes, I am having these thoughts. It doesn't mean that I accept the content of the thoughts. It doesn't mean that I accept that I like this experience. That's not what acceptance is. Acceptance is not about just embracing and enjoying, but it really is about acknowledging, like, this is what is. And there's no way it's supposed to be. There's no way it should be. There just is what is. And my ability to work with what is, whenever it's happening in this moment, is gonna dramatically eliminate my resistance to life. And my resistance is actually the cause of my suffering, right? Because when I'm trying to make life a different way than it is, that's a tough journey. Right? I've done that. I don't recommend it. Like, life is going to happen. Okay. And in many aspects, you're not in control of it. Okay. And once we can start to accept that, and what I mean by that is really embrace that idea, like that's just what it is, then we begin to stop trying to resist and control and manipulate life so much, and we start to work with it. And even then, we can start to get into higher places in our life. We're really trusting that life is not something that happens to me, but life happens for me. And I know that idea might be radical to some people listening right now. And that's okay. That's okay. Because for me, that sounded crazy, but when I look even at the most challenging periods of my life, especially when I was really, really stuck in dealing with poor mental health, that served a purpose. That period of my life served a purpose, and it brought me to where I am now. Right. And having navigated that, it was very tough, but it doesn't necessarily mean it was bad and that I shouldn't have experienced it or any of that. What it means is that it was just, that was part of the journey right there. Right. And no part of your journey is permanent. Right. No, every part of your journey is going to serve a certain purpose at that time. And in many ways, at the end of the journey, if you really trust that life happens for you, even your darkest and hardest times can be used for good. You may not understand it when you're going through it, but me going through that experience has given me the opportunity to have a higher mission now for myself in life, where I get to work with other people and help other people and guide them. And that's, oh my gosh, like it's amazing. It's a beautiful thing that I get to experience that. And I'm so grateful for it. But I could never do that if I didn't go through what I went through, because I wouldn't have the knowledge base and the experience to actually offer guidance. And so even if you're in a dark time right now, right? Because I don't know where you are as you're listening to this. When you're really embracing the idea of acceptance, it's not about you have to pretend that you enjoy your experience, but you can stop fighting with it and to say, hey, I'm going to embrace this and trust that I'll understand this later. I'll look back on this and understand this later. And for many of us, we can look back at challenging periods of our life, even like poor relationships we were in or whatever. And there's always something to be gained from that, even if it's what not to do, right? Or who not to be with, right? Like that's still something we gain. We get a lesson from it. And each step brings us to a higher level within ourselves and a higher level of consciousness. And if many things, OCD and anxiety, one of the things that really enables you to do is to force yourself to go into a higher level of consciousness. And that is such a powerful thing. And I think it's a great gift. And most people would never think to go into that, because if they're comfortable where they are, right, and they just like doing what they're doing, and there's no reason to evolve yourself. Evolving usually comes through necessity, right? And stepping into higher consciousness and a higher level of yourself oftentimes needs to be a very challenging episode in order to make you do that. That's why our biggest growth often comes through oftentimes very painful experiences. And with OCD and anxiety, it actually can be a thing that can propel you into newer levels of yourself, higher levels of yourself. That's what I was trying to say. And so if you don't fully resonate with what I'm saying right now, it's okay. But I want you to know that like that's what the journey really is. See, because what's so interesting is that, and what I've learned is that at one level of consciousness, something that you experience can be perceived as suffering, but at another level of consciousness, it can be an amazing gift. And I think that was said by Alan Watts. I'm paraphrasing there, right? But what I've learned about OCD and anxiety is that it serves a purpose to bring you to a higher level of consciousness if you allow it. And the first step of that is really accepting the fact that you're experiencing it, and then allowing yourself to let go of the things that you're clinging to help you navigate that experience. So just wanted to share that today on this episode. And so, I hope that's helpful, and really just understanding the power of acceptance and what that can do for your journey to recovery, and kind of how it ties in. It obviously, doing ERP and using the AAA response is going to be paramount to your success, because you've got to break out of that loop. But acceptance, I mean, you really got to accept what you're experiencing and what that means, right? And that starts with the idea of not letting go and not clinging and working with what is. And once you do that, that's where the journey really begins. And so, this week, I just encourage you guys, if you're struggling, like, not to necessarily enjoy that. I'm not saying to enjoy struggle. I don't believe in that, right? It's like struggling it's painful, right? But to honor that part, right? So to honor that part of your journey and embrace it for what it is, because it serves its purpose and it serves its step. And so, and as you navigate, and again, whatever you're dealing with will not be permanent, right? That's one of the things about acceptance is that everything's always changing. That's why acceptance is important. So whatever you're experiencing will not be permanent, and you will go into different phases, and your ability to work with that movement is really going to be a big part of your suffering or lack of suffering in life, because if you can work with what is, you're not going to be resisting what is. So hopefully that makes sense. And I hope you take that and take it with you on your journey. And I hope it helps. For those of you that are looking for more guidance and help, again, we have some resources over at Restored Minds for you. A free guide that talks about the AAA response and how you can use it in your life, as well as our programs. We have our live Q&As that we run with our community, and our Taking Back Control program, as well as our group and individual coachings. And again, we are able to work with people all over the world. So if that's something that you're interested in looking at, please just click the little link down below. You'll be taken over to our page, and you can learn more and get started on your journey. Also, please help us out and show your support by liking and subscribing, and even leaving a review on iTunes or Google Podcasts for us, just so we can start to get these messages out to more and more people. So thank you all. I wish you a great day and a great week. And next week, we're moving into Thanksgiving here in the States. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about gratitude and just the power of that as well. So thank you all for hanging out, and appreciate everyone. And I wish you guys a great week. Take care.